次のスライドいかないんですか。はい。ISAP2020 ではスライドというシステムを使い、
At ISAP 2020, we're using the Slido system to accept questions real time, and by sharing keywords with other participants, it makes it possible to be interactive. And we have the QR code on the session webpage, so you can access through your smartphone, PC, or tablet. Thank you for waiting. Today, I will be the MC. My name is Fujino from IJUS. So we'd like to talk about connecting local and global, bolstering green and zero-carbon cities. So we have 75 minutes. It's going to be very, very concentrated. We hope you enjoy. So first, we'd like to ask the new Executive Director of IJUS, Yasuo Takahashi, to say a few words, please. Hello, everyone. My name is Takahashi. I'm the Executive Director of IJUS. Today, thank you for attending our international symposium, ISAP, hosted by IJUS, Connecting Local and Global, Bolstering Green and Zero-Carbon Cities. And thank you to our speakers for taking time out of their busy public duties. At IJUS, regarding climate change, SDGs, biodiversity, and other studies on sustainability, we've been moving forward. Under COVID-19, the Environmental Ministry has hosted an online platform, and we are serving as the Secretariat. Plus, how can we build a zero-carbon society? Under this understanding, on September the 3rd, Mr. Koizumi, our Environmental Ministry, hosted an online platform, and we are serving as the Secretariat. Plus, response, recovery, redesign. We are proposing a triple R framework. For a more transformative social transformation, we are accelerating our activities. Regarding building a future sustainable society between cities and regions, interaction is important. For IJUS too, cities are an important partner, and domestically and overseas, zero-carbon cities and SDGs localization, CESs, and voluntary local reviews, we have been supporting these. And this time, with the EU, as part of the cooperation program, we are providing opportunities to learn from advanced EU cases. And next year, early in the year, this again is proposed by Mr. Koizumi, we are proposing a zero-carbon city international forum, and IJUS will be serving as the Secretariat. And based on the results of all of this, in Japan too, we are enjoying a big momentum regarding zero-carbon cities. And we hope to make this larger and more secure. And the Race to Zero campaign and COP26, we hope to make it lead to those. I hope that today's meeting, under your proactive participation, will become meaningful to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Takahashi. As part of the EU program, we're going to have this session. And I'd like to now invite Ms. Heidi Hiltunen, First Counselor, Energy and Transport EU Delegation to Japan. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and welcome all to this event on the role of green and zero-carbon cities in decarbonization at local, national, and global levels. And thank you very much to IJUS for organizing this event. I hope that next year we will all be able to meet in person. This is actually a very good time to discuss the role of cities in decarbonization in the EU and in Japan. Very recently, on October 26th, Prime Minister Suga announced that Japan will aim for carbon neutrality by 2050. This means that we are now heading in the same direction in the EU and in Japan. As you know, the EU announced its climate neutrality target last year in the context of adoption of the European Green Deal. The European Green Deal is the EU's new growth strategy. It aims to make the EU a modern, resource-efficient, and competitive economy, where there are no net emissions of greenhouse gases in 2050, and where economic growth is decoupled from resource and energy use. In fact, in the EU, we have already achieved decoupling of economic growth and growth of greenhouse gas emissions. You might know that between 1990 and 2019, the EU economy grew by 60%, while emissions decreased by 23%. The EU Green Deal is about creating jobs, increasing competitiveness, and boosting innovation. This actually sounds quite familiar to the words of Prime Minister Suga of Japan when he announced Japan's new target for 2050. So this kind of a target means a fundamental transformation of our policies in a number of areas. We need to mobilize the industry for a clean and circular economy. We need to ensure energy efficiency of our buildings, to ensure that energy is produced in a clean, affordable, and secure way, and move to sustainable and smart mobility, and also to mobilize research and innovation. In all these areas, cities are at the forefront to make sure that these deep transformations really happen. Rethinking mobility in cities, renovating buildings to make them more energy efficient, decarbonization of energy production, these are all areas in which cities in the EU and in Japan will play a key role. A transformation of this scale, of course, costs a lot of money, that is clear. So let me say a few words about the financial support the EU will be providing to make all of this happen. What we call the Next Generation EU is the EU's new instrument for supporting recovery from COVID crisis, and at the same time to help to ensure that these fundamental transitions in the EU member states that are outlined in the EU Green Deal will really happen. This instrument consists of 750 billion euros of grants and loans over a 7-year period. What is key to this instrument is that the funding from it will be geared to support the green and digital transformations in the EU. So it's not about choosing between investments into COVID recovery and investments into decarbonization. It's about ensuring that these two processes go hand in hand. This is the path that the EU has chosen for its future development. And like I already said, listening to Prime Minister Suga's speech in the Diet shows that the Japanese government is actually thinking very much in the same way. This creates a very fruitful ground for EU-Japan cooperation on decarbonization, and this event is a very good opportunity for that. So I wish you all a very successful webinar today. Thank you very much.
Heidi さん、どうもご挨拶ありがとうございまし
Heidi,
た。
thank you very much for your words. So, grow the economy plus achieve green as well. So after this, we'll ask Mr. Wada from the Japanese government to speak. But before that, what are the countries across the world doing? We'd like to ask Mr. Yunus Arikan from ICLE, Local Governments for Sustainability. He's the Director of Global Advocacy. We'd like Yunus-san to give us a presentation. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Junichi. I hope you're able to see my screen now.
よく見えます。
Yes, we can see very well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation to IGES and all the partners and the organizers and sponsors of this event. It's a great pleasure for me to join this exciting moment and an event. And I also would like to, of course, congratulate Mr. Takahashi in his new function, and I also would like to welcome all my distinguished panelists of the session. I look forward to an exciting discussion. So obviously, as just a starting point from my mission as ICLEI, with a very short, brief presentation of who we are. We are a global network of local and regional governments. We're on sustainability as a voluntary action since 1990. We have more than 1,500 members all around the world in 100 countries. We have been active in this space, especially through the Earth Summit, and our pathways, low emission, nature-based, equitable, centered, resilient and circular development is our commitment to accelerate localization of UN Decade of Sustainability Action. In this regard, we have always enjoyed the engagement of Japanese cities. ICLEI Japan office is one of the longest serving members of ICLEI, and in that sense, we have been actively collaborating with IGES for years. So this, we believe, is one of the milestones of our progress. So obviously, Junish, thank you very much for offering me the opportunity to speak about cities. Obviously, I cannot speak about the countries, but I can speak about our members and globally. Probably you are hearing so many data and figures about cities and climate change. For the sake of this discussion, I just wanted to highlight one figure that is one of the newest ones. According to the study of Coalition for Urban Transitions, which ICLEI is one of the partners, 90% of emissions from cities, which is around 15 gigaton by 2050, can be cut using proven technologies and practices. This is a striking information. This is, if you compare the current global emissions of 40 gigatons, it is significant. And it is more importantly that the question is not whether we can, but how fast and how globally we can make that. And of course, it connects to political leadership, it connects to capacities, and it connects to finance. But more importantly, the question is not we can do it or not, but how fast we can do it. That's why the initiatives on Race to Zeros, on net zero cities in Japan is extremely important to show globally that we are on the right track and ask other countries to join us. Local and regional governments, of course, have been engaged in the UN process since 1995, building on the Spirit of Earth Summit. But however, over these 20 years, there was a huge gap that the UNFCCC and Kyoto Protocol did not acknowledge our contribution. So we had been actively involved in asking the nations to empower, engage, and connect to us, recognize us. And that's why Paris Agreement is crucial, because in the preambular paragraph, you can find a specific text which says the parties of the UNFCCC recognize the importance of engagement of all levels of government. That is crucial because after Paris Agreement, local and regional climate action is not anymore a voluntary ask, but it's part of the machinery, both at the national and global level. Therefore, our contributions could contribute to the national ambitions and global ambitions. And in that sense, this 90% of available potential is now a huge offer that national governments should take into their NDCs. And that's our mission on the way forward. Coming back, the UN is, of course, a member states parties-driven process, but we are participating as observers or global stakeholders. Every year we participate in this process. ICLEI has been facilitating this as the focal point of local governments and municipal authorities constituency. Towards COP26, we have announced that we have 6 priorities, and the first 2 I'd like to raise, underline that. First, raising ambition, and second is NDC vertical integration. The fact that the current NDCs are not compatible with Paris Agreement is, in fact, an opportunity that we could build on, because from now until COP26, nations, when they bring new NDCs, they can bring local and regional governments in the process so that they can make it much more effectively implemented, but more importantly, ambitious. In that sense, we welcome this initiative of IGES because for the past couple of months, Minister of Environment of Japan and IGES have been making a remarkable progress. Very likely we will hear from the representatives. I will not go into the details, but ICLEI has been actively supporting this process, both at the national level and at the global level. We have been making our presentation as a joint event at COP25 with Minister of Environment. You can see ICLEI President and ICLEI mayors. In July, we have made a joint webinar where we also had Governor of Nagano and Mayor of Tsutayama. We had been one of the active partners of Platform for Redesign, and on Daring Cities 2 weeks ago, Minister of Environment have once again underlined that if we want to take Japan to go to climate neutrality, cities and regions net zero targets are very crucial. And 5 days later, after this announcement, Prime Minister has announced Japan on the way to climate neutrality. This remarkable collaboration, I think, is a good practice that we would like to embark on. Globally, what is going on in the ICLEI network, we have mapped that we have 1,000 cities, around 900 plus, 1,000 cities who have committed to a pioneering climate ambition. This includes cities and regions who transition to 100% renewables, who declare climate emergency, who are committing to climate neutrality, and who are divesting from fossil fuels. 2 weeks ago, we have announced our climate neutrality framework. And through those climate neutrality framework, which is ambitious emission reductions, divesting, and offsetting, we would like to combine these commitments and climate neutrality as special targets to the UNFCCC Race to Zero, which I will now focus as my last comment. So this is a new initiative. It was in part of the 2019 UN Climate Action Summit. It was proposed by Chile as the host of COP. At the COP25 in December, this was announced, where there is more cities and regions joining at. ICLEI was one of those. At that time, we have introduced 150 cities and regions. In June, we have seen that this climate ambition coalition has evolved into a UNFCCC Race to Zero campaign under the auspices of the UNFCCC Climate Champions. As of June, we are seeing that we have around 90 plus Japanese cities and regions. 3 of them are registered through C40, and 89 of them are registered through ICLEI's channels to the UNFCCC Race to Zero campaign. What's coming up since 2020 June is that we have a minimum criteria that all those cities and regions are expected to pledge, plan, proceed, and publish. In that regard, ICLEI is also recommending the UNFCCC champions to acknowledge the existing climate neutrality commitments, like the Japanese cities and regions, so that they are part of this Race to Zero campaign. So my last slide, as my last contribution, the 5 proposals on the way forward, which could be a discussion for today, and of course towards the upcoming days and weeks. Contribution of net zero cities in Japan's 2050 climate neutrality goals. The announcement by Prime Minister for us is an example of multi-level collaboration. So we encourage Japan to be prominently, more prominently in demonstrating this as a role model to the world. We know since 1990s, Japanese Minister of Environment have helping the Japanese cities and regions. So this is in fact not a one-day event or not a 1 year's effort. It's the 30 years of success of Japan. So we encourage this to advance. We would like to support the Japanese cities and regions to qualify the UNFCCC Race to Zero campaign, both with the criteria definitions, but also support them to pledge and also report through CDP, the Unified Reporting Platform. We want to encourage that net zero cities are connected to redesign and Japan's global overseas development financing instruments. We want to encourage that net zero targets are also connected to climate emergency declarations, 100% renewable energy, and fossil fuel divestment. And last but not least, 2 weeks later, there will be UNFCCC dialogues. We encourage Minister of Environment of Japan to share this practice with the UNFCCC parties. We would, as ICLEI, would host a side event. We would be more than happy to have Minister of Environment in Japan. And we hope, we are excited to hear this announcement of a Net Zero Cities Forum. Maybe it could be one of those announcements on the 12th of December from Japanese government at the highest level. And we as ICLEI are ready to collaborate both at the national and global level. With this, I would like to conclude my intervention. And once again, thank you very much for all your contributions and time, and I look forward to an exciting discussion.
Yunus さん、とてもエキサイティングなご発表ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much, Mr. Yunus. Very exciting. And Heidi, Yunus, I think you have very high expectations to Japan. And also, the US is going to start moving as well, I think. So now I would like to invite Mr. Tokuya Yaba, Director General for Environmental Policy, Ministry of the Environment of Japan. I am Wada. Very nice to meet you all. I would like to talk about what Japan is doing and what the Ministry of the Environment Japan is doing in terms of policies. So it's about Japan by the Ministry of the Environment, and the key words are regions and also societies. We are in charge of such things as regions and societies. So it's not about energy, it's not about industry, but it's about regions, societies, and our livelihood. So what are the latest movements at our ministry? As you know very well, in 2015, there was a paradigm shift that took place. SDGs being adopted, new sustainable development goals being formulated. What's new about it is that about all 17 SDGs, they are all interlinked. So it's not as if you can work on just 2 or 3 in a picky manner, but you have to address all of the things. They are colored differently, and you have to come up with strategies and policies which can link all of these goals. And in the same year, in December, the Paris Agreement was adopted. It's number 13 SDG, and this is linked to all remaining 16 goals. And from this perspective, the Ministry of the Environment is formulating our policies. So coming back to Japan, in the past 5 or 6 years, we have suffered from big storms and also floodings and etc. And we have spent a lot of manpower as well as the resources to remove all of the debris of these disasters. And now we are seeing another crisis, which is this coronavirus. So we have to address both climate change and the COVID-19 at the same time. Next, please. So against this backdrop, as introduced already, we had an initiative initiated by the Ministry of the Environment, Mr. Koizumi. And he is talking about 3 transformations to take place in terms of economy and society. It's not just one industry or just one sector of economy, but the entire socio-economic system needs to be redesigned. So this will be a paradigm shift. One is a decarbonization of the society, and the second is circulating economy or circulating society. That is the second pillar. And the third is decentralized society. I think the coronavirus as a crisis or disaster is putting a lot of a focus on decentralized society and how effective it could be. And as a very important tool to support these 3 transitions, we have ESG funding, and also we have environmental diplomacy. And as has been mentioned already last month, towards the end of last month, Japanese Prime Minister made this announcement to achieve carbon neutral by 2050 as a country. So this is a new announcement made, or declaration, that is. So towards that declaration to be achieved, what is to be done? That has to be already discussed. So we have to start such a discussion. And what's important here is, so in the past, we were talking about different industrial sectors and what kind of technologies are to be used to achieve carbon neutrality. It's not just that. We have to look at people's livelihood and also regional economies. So decarbonization is not a future that is difficult to achieve thing, but it is an attractive future. Who creates it? It's the local governments, it's the communities, and local governments and the people's livelihood. And with this idea, we came up with this idea, which is to create a circulating and ecological sphere. So it started from an idea to have a linkage between rural areas and also urban areas in a kind of synergistic manner with the circulating money or investment. But it's not simply about the problem of rural areas or urban areas. It is a problem that is to do with all of the local communities and local governments. They all need to have a sense of ownership and to pursue the initiatives to create this attractive future of decarbonization. That is what is necessary. Next, please. So in that sense, we have these zero carbon cities in Japan. 170 plus local governments have already declared this, encompassing over 80 million people in Japan. And please take a look at this. So talking about attractive community in the future. And I have been talking about ownership. And this may be discussed by the representative from the city of Yokohama. This is about sharing renewable energies between the producing areas and consuming areas. And local production and local consumption of energy is very important. This is a local business, and this is also a creation of mobility, fun mobility. We are seeing aging society, and EV vehicles will be a very important part of the lifestyle reform because of this automated nature. So this kind of a sustainable energy can be operated in each local area. Next is about how to create attractive cities and towns, and how can this contribute to decarbonization. We have to be able to use renewable energies as much as possible in local areas, and when there is a disaster, we can still be sustainable. Back in autumn last year, we had power outage, but there was this one community where they didn't suffer power outage, and there was also heat that is being provided, and that was very popular, and that was to do with the heightened resilience of the community, and this is a very attractive community, and also people enjoyed having this kind of lifestyle. So we have more and more examples of that right now being accumulated. So talking about the circulating and ecological sphere, we have to make those communities attractive, but we have to start from the needs of these communities, and with the ownership of the communities, what can be done. So they have to be able to come up with ideas, and they have those unique resources they have. What may be missing can be supported and provided as support by other communities, which is within the same network. So we will have a kind of networking of the societies in the world in order to make contribution to the national government target to decarbonize the societies. And those local communities are maybe more attractive than the country itself. And this is the kind of initiative we would like to support as the Ministry of Environment. Thank you very much.
Mr. Wada, thank you very much. And because he has public duties, he'll be leaving us. But the EU and the German government and Denmark, Lauren City, and ICLE, we have all these participants. Do you have a message for them before you go? In Japan, carbon neutral. We have made the declaration. And the basis for this is, of course, living and the region. And local governments have a network, not just in Japan, but local governments across the world. I hope that they can link together. And in that respect, we want to have a worldwide network, and I look forward to this happening. Yes, thank you. So we saw Yunus appearing on the screen, but yes, thank you very much, Mr. Wada. Yes, I'm afraid I have to leave, but I look forward to continuing this with you. Okay, so the region. Next, I would like to invite the City of Yokohama, the Director General of the Climate Change Policy Headquarters, Ms. Eriko Yakushiji, to talk about, I think the example of Yokohama was introduced a little bit, but please talk about your zero carbon efforts. Hello, everyone. I'm from Yokohama City, and thank you for this opportunity today. Thank you very much. And I would like to introduce the efforts by Yokohama City. Ms. Yakushiji, could you please speak a little closer to the microphone? Can you hear me? Yes, that's better. Thank you. Can you hear me? Is that better? Yes, that's good. Thank you. Could you please put my slides up? Next slide, please. So Yokohama City, in 2018, Zero Carbon Yokohama, we made the declaration. And we've been engaged in a variety of efforts. Earlier on, Mr. Wada explained. So as a zero carbon city, we have been working on a variety of things. Next slide, please. Regarding zero carbon, to representing the zero carbon cities, in September, there was an online ministerial meeting on climate change, and the mayor of Yokohama appeared at this meeting. And on October the 21st, Yokohama's efforts were disseminated. And I'd like to thank everyone for their cooperation. And we've been talking about this. Prime Minister Suga talking about 2050 and carbon neutral. And actually, Prime Minister Suga was first elected in Yokohama City. And by the way, Environmental Minister Koizumi was actually elected first in Kanagawa Prefecture. That's our prefecture. So we are like their back home, hometowns. So we are very excited and very encouraged. Next, please. And there are several efforts by Yokohama that I would like to introduce. The next page, please. One is, earlier on, Mr. Wada talked about this. There's the renewable energy potential in certain other prefectures, and we are trying to get them to supply us with energy. There are 13 municipalities in the Tohoku region that we have signed contracts with, and we are moving forward with this. And next, please. I don't have time. And Yokohama City has a lot of companies located there, and we've been cooperating with companies to reduce CO2 emissions. Ever since 2010, for 10 years, we've been doing this, and these are very effective for reducing carbon dioxide. Next, please. And we also have our Blue Carbon initiative. In Japan, we are a marine country, and Yokohama, too, is by the seaside. And since the olden days, we have been placing emphasis on efforts to get blue carbon more popular. In Japan, blue carbon is more widely recognized, and we're very happy about this situation. Next, please. Other than this, there's international cooperation. Starting with ICLEI, we have cooperation with other cities and city networks, and we've been taking part in these efforts. Next, please. In particular, our relationship with the EU. Yokohama City has partner cities. One of them is Frankfurt, and we have an office in Frankfurt. And with Frankfurt City, as part of the EU programs, we have a cooperation to increase renewable energy and utilizing nudge for increasing awareness. So how can we get the citizens to take part? We wanted to place more emphasis on this. And together with people in Frankfurt, we have been engaging in cooperation. Next, please. In particular, regarding COVID-19, the impact of COVID-19 has been large in Yokohama City as well, because in Yokohama, we have been aiming to become a tourism city. And as you know, this year, in July, we were supposed to be hosting the Olympic Games in Japan. For example, cruise ships. We've been placing emphasis on those. And the berths, we have a berth where 7 cruise ships can come to land at the same time. And we also have convention facilities that we're aiming to open by the Olympics. And in the city, too, there are several hotels, large-scale commercial facilities, and they all opened up for the Olympic Games. However, because of COVID-19, this has been a big hit. And efforts by Yokohama City. So we have 3 supplementary budgets for 610 billion yen. And we're trying to bring the economy back to life. And that's what we are working hard on right now. Next, please. So that being the case, in particular, what we are placing emphasis on is the SDGs. In particular, so at our climate change policy headquarters, we are moving forward with SDGs and climate change. Green recovery, we think, is very important. And our businesses in the city, from the perspective of SDGs, sustainable business, we want them to think about green recovery. We think that's an easy to understand way to do this. So we have the SDGs Business Support Fund. And companies in our city that contribute to SDGs, we offer them subsidies. That's one of the initiatives we've just started. And our efforts are still not sufficient, but we're now compiling the budget for next fiscal year. So regarding green recovery and SDGs efforts that contribute to this, that's something else we want to place more emphasis on. That's all from myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yakushiji, for your very detailed and concrete presentation. It's not just carbon, but SDGs all included. You are trying to build a sustainable city, and your city is where Mr. Suga was elected lawmaker there. And I'd like to make our own contribution on the part of IGES to your efforts as well. So going back, Ms. Vera Rodenhoff, Head of Division in the German Federal Ministry for the Environment, Nature Conservation, Building and Nuclear Safety. The floor is yours, Ms. Rodenhoff.
Thank you very much, and good morning and good evening to everyone here, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, everyone that is on the call. Thank you very much for inviting me to this important event. It's events like these who help us cooperate and show how we can work together to address the climate crisis we are facing and limit global warming to what is needed, 1.5 degrees Celsius. We have already heard it mentioned here that cities are at the forefront of this climate crisis. And we know that by 2050, over 1 billion city dwellers will be at risk by flooding, for example, by flooding from rising sea levels or suffering extreme heat. And we also know that cities are responsible for about 1/3 of global CO2 emissions and also 1/3 of global energy consumption. But we know also that many local, and we have heard here that many local governments are very ambitious in setting targets and providing actions for emissions reductions and just thus addressing this crisis. And we are convinced that it needs collaboration across all levels of government to unlock the full potential of urban climate mitigation. Cities can address less than 1/3 of the urban mitigation potential on their own. According to a recent report that was, I think, already mentioned here by Yunus from the Coalition of Urban Transition, Climate Crisis and Urban Opportunities, which was launched last year also with our help at the Global Climate Action Summit held by the UN Secretary General. And the remaining share, so 1/3 is already a lot, but cities can do more, and the whole remaining share can be unlocked if all levels of government work together. So cities, regions, and the national level, who also set their respective framework conditions. We, as the German government, provide such support to cities in multiple forms, and I will give a few examples here. One example is our National Climate Initiative. This initiative has been supporting more than 32,000 projects across using 1 billion euros since 2008. It is funding, among others, the creation of urban climate protection plans, municipal climate protection managers, and investments into more energy efficient infrastructure. And while the individual context between cities may differ quite substantially, many of these results are also transferable to other cities in Germany or across the borders to cities in Europe and beyond. And they can amplify the effects of these individual lighthouse projects. Second, what we do And just as important is at the federal level, we set framework conditions for renewable energy and energy efficiency at the national level. We do this, for example, through our feed-in tariffs for renewable energy and our energy efficiency building codes, and through support programs for highly energy efficient buildings. These are just a few examples of what the national level can do to also mitigate greenhouse gas emissions at the city level. Third, of course, the EU level in the EU is also key for setting framework conditions for local climate actions. Germany is currently holding the EU Council presidency, and we are working on implementing the EU Green Deal, which you have heard about already here, and the EU climate law. So there, Ms. Heidi Hiltunen mentioned many ways in which the EU is doing its share to fight climate change. Cities also need daring national governments to invest in green recovery and to come out of the pandemic and the economic crisis many of us are facing. The German economic stimulus package totaling 130 billion euros includes compensation for the loss of local businesses' taxes as a major source for income for local authorities. In addition, our ministry has announced a 100 million euro recovery program for climate measures in cities and municipalities. And with this program, we are able, for example, reducing the co-payments that municipalities need to provide to access national funding. Beyond Germany and Europe, the Federal Ministry of Environment is also involved in city-oriented initiatives through our International Climate Initiative. One example I can give here is that we launched last year the City Climate Finance Gap Fund as an initiative. And this initiative was launched starting at the Climate Week in New York this September. The GAP Fund is the first global fund dedicated to supporting cities in developing and emerging countries in the very early stages of project development. It does so by providing technical assistance and grant funding. So with the GAP Fund, cities can overcome the first very hard steps on their way to prepare projects which then go on to, at some point, become bankable. Together with Luxembourg and the German Ministry of Development, we have committed a total of 55 million euros to this fund already. And we are envisaging that this fund will have a budget of at least 1 million euros. And thus the fund can unlock 4 billion euros worth of investments to implement cities' climate plans. And we are speaking to many governments about whether they would be interested in supporting this fund. And of course, we would also invite Japan to invest in this fund. We can follow up with you on this. The GAP Fund is one initiative that is part of the framework initiative LUCI, that stands for Leadership for Urban Climate Initiative, that we launched at the UN Global Climate Action Summit. LUCI brings together partners from, among other governments, development banks, city networks, and think tanks, and many more, and provides a comprehensive approach encompassing the entire investment and infrastructure value chain that accelerates, scales up, and leverages climate finance for cities. And I am very happy also that Japan is part of this framework initiative, LUCI. Like Ms. Heidi Hiltunen, I would also like to congratulate the Japanese government on their bold announcement to join the group of countries with the ambitious goal of reaching net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. This is a very, very important signal, and I hope that many more countries will follow it. We can all be hopeful now that maybe the US with President-elect Biden might also follow suit. So I'm very happy that Japan went and joined at this early stage as a front runner country. I also believe that the Net Zero Cities initiatives, including more than 150 cities, will lead to a strong momentum for climate action in Japan and hopefully also set an example beyond. In the lead up to the COP26 and in the middle of the Race to Zero campaign, these commitments from Japan come at the right time. Looking at these recent initiatives from both Japan and what Germany is doing, I'm delighted to see a strong momentum for ambitious climate action. I believe that we should use this momentum to further develop our mutual learning and forge strong international partnerships in these challenging times. And I have already mentioned many, and many have been mentioned here. So this sets the right tone. I thank you very much again. Unfortunately, I have to leave due to other commitments, but I wish you a great continuation of this important event.
ありがとうございました。ダンケシェン。
Thank you, Dankeschön. So Germany is very advanced and you have a gap fund. And Mr. Wada has had to leave, but we have Mr. Shibuya from the Ministry of the Environment and he was listening properly. So he'll probably take that back to the Environmental Ministry and discuss it. And in Germany, the cities there, other than the EU, the Stadtwerke. So there are so many people who know about this, and I do hope that Germany's efforts, especially at the city level, we will have more opportunities to learn from you in Germany. So thank you very much for joining us today. Next, within the EU, there's another city from the island of Lolland. I would like to invite a member of the City Council, Mr. Leo Christensen, to give us a report. And Leo-san, ever since the earthquake in 2011, he's been visiting Japan several times since 2011, and he has given us a lot of support. Leo-san, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to exchange information on such important topics as we have on the agenda today. My name is Leo Christensen, as you said, and comes from the Danish municipality named Lolland. We have been involved in the development of sustainable systems for many years, and particularly we have focused on developing the CO2 neutral society. Lolland is an island with about 60,000 inhabitants, who since the oil crisis have lost all major factories, such as shipyards and steel industries, as well as slaughterhouses, dairies and grain mills, leaving us with a loss counting 15% of the population, typically well-educated and their families. Only a few years passed from being well off economically to being among the 5 poorest municipalities in Denmark. When it looks worst for the municipality in 1999, the politicians made an important and very courageous decision. They decided that we should develop the local community to not only be CO2 neutral, but to become full-scale laboratory for green energy production and distribution. The municipality bought the old shipyard and the farms around the yard and changed the status of the whole area to an energy and the environmental industry areas. It was perfect timing. We created more than 2,000 direct jobs and many support industries. Today, the Japanese company MHI Industries and the Danish company Vestas are the main industries behind the production of the world's largest wind turbine blades on the old shipyard. When we started the expansion of green energy production, primarily on and offshore windmills, solar panels and biomass, it was a problem to transmit more than 20% green electricity into the grid. An important issue I often had heard on my visits to Japan and other countries. Today, Lolland municipality produces 8 times more green energy than the total consumption of the Iceland problem solved. In ISA 2020 concept note to this session, it states that the challenges should be dealt with in an integrated manner. It's a very precise description of the key tools we have used throughout our development from a fossil-fueled society to a green energy production, both CO2 neutral, but also net exporter of green energy. We have developed a cooperation with Denmark's capital city, Copenhagen. Large cities do not have rooms for green energy plants, except for burning off biomass. And we will stop this in a short number of years. We will not become a fully sustainable society until we have developed the ash-free society. This is one of the next goals in Denmark. Copenhagen is investing a very large sums on Lolland in wind turbines and solar cells. Today, the turnover in the export of green energy is greater than the agricultural turnover, approximately 41 billion yen per year. This is also a keystone to ensure that Copenhagen will be the first CO2 neutral capital city in 2025. However, our agreement is much more integrated in both societies. It includes elements around sustainable food production and tourism that secure Lolland municipality jobs. The whole balance between metropoles and the rural areas around them is a very powerful tool, where the metropoles provide money, knowledge, and development through universities, and the rural areas provide energy, food, and tourism experience to the inhabitants in the metropoles. Another benefit for Lolland is that these activities have begun to attract young, well-educated people. They want to live in the nature, and they are happy to move from the big cities if we can get them jobs. The latest information we have is that the Corona-19 also has an impact on the migration patterns from big cities to rural municipalities. I believe that the most important message I can convey from Lolland to this session is that it's not about money in the first place when you want a green development. It's about the attitude of the local towards change. We have never had problems getting investors as long as the municipality guarantees the space for the production facilities and the state guarantees by law space on the grid. When we talk about wind turbines and solar parks, they take up a lot of space, both physically and visually. Therefore, it is the task of the rural areas to accommodate these facilities, seen from a national perspective. However, the locals have to live with what some call visual pollution. And there are other issues with noise and flashes of lights as well. It takes many years while the entire production system is fully created before the locals get bigger again around many new jobs, new factories and higher living standards. Nevertheless, this will happen. We are the living proof. It's our hope that Lolland can help decision takers around the world as an example that such development is not only possible, it already exists. Thank you.
レオさん、本当に強烈な経験
Leo,
を
thank you very much. Thank you for sharing these really impressive experiences. So Yokohama is working together with 12 municipalities in the region of Tohoku. Yuzawa City in Akita Prefecture, where Prime Minister Suga was born, that is included. And I think what's next is the next challenge going forward. Thank you very much. So last but not least, I'd like to introduce to you from IGES, Ms. Akagi is going to give us a presentation. Akagi-san, the floor is yours. I'd like to talk about IGES's contribution to green and zero carbon cities. My name is Akagi. I'm research manager of Kita-Kyushu Urban Center. So against the backdrop of coronavirus spread, there was unsustainable development, such as the rapid deforestation, rapid urbanization, and massive movement of people. I think they all contributed to COVID-19. Biodiversity to be discussed in May in China, and climate change to be discussed in November in Glasgow, and also climate-related disasters, all of them have aggravated the situation of infection. Especially in the context of climate change, with the spread of the coronavirus, UNFCCC issued June Momentum back in June of this year. Minister Koizumi announced to hold redesign high-level conference in September. And close to 40 ministers came together on this online platform. This was held. And I just was the secretariat of this online platform, and it's been supporting the activities of the Ministry of the Environment. Last month, on the 21st, ICLEI's online conference daring cities were held on green recovery and redesign. It was a high-level session as well, and we now have ISAP 22. I am hoping to bring about those results of the conferences into the COP26 to be held next year. When it comes to redesigning, after the spread of COVID-19 at IGES, we established an internal team, and we issued a paper which put together the analysis of the current state back in May. And last month in Daring Cities conference, the director Takeuchi announced a triple R framework, which consists of response, recovery, and redesign. I would like to give you a case of Toyama City. Toyama is responding to sprawling of the city and declining birth rate and aging of the society. And since about 20 years, they have been focusing on the compact city based on public transport. And they have LRT, which is a tram, and they have seen the reduction in the number of users by 40% because of the coronavirus. And then they came up as a response measures to promote, for instance, walking in the city amongst the elderly people who tend to stay at home, and also disseminate information about the safety of the public transport. And then they have recovered the number of users to 25% reduction. As recovery, they are having analysis of monitoring of the people flow using the digital technology in order to activate people's activities in the city. As part of the redesigning, they are focusing on park management, setting up buffer area between the people and the nature. And while taking measures against infectious diseases, people can come out to the park to enjoy themselves, to have better health. So in the city of Toyama, they have been focusing on compact city policy. Now it's combined with the digital technology, and they are now reviewing the urban planning, including the greenery area, in order to build a city that is resilient. This can be learned by other cities. Tokyo City, Yokohama City, and Kyoto City are at the forefront among ICLEI members, and they have made this decarbonization declaration by 2050, and Minister Koizumi is promoting that, and more than 170 municipalities have made that declaration, covering more than 60% of the Japanese population. IGES is working together with 28 municipalities in Kyushu to analyze what is the motivation behind it and what they are doing, and we'll put together the result of such survey and make it available on the website of IGES. So what are the challenges? What can be done? We are trying to help those cities in Kyushu so that they will be able to come up with the optimal solution. And the city of Kyoto is using AIM model that is used by IPCC and setting up the objective of the Japanese government. They have done an analysis, a quantitative one by 2050, and the result suggests that 95% of the CO2 reduction is possible, and the remaining part can be addressed with the forest absorption of CO2. And this model can now be applicable to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia as one model. And the decarbonization, the city-to-city collaboration by the Ministry of the Environment is being used by Kuala Lumpur. And since last year, with the cooperation of Tokyo, we now have the energy saving and renewable energy method that are covering 4,200 buildings in Tokyo to also address around 2,000 buildings in Kuala Lumpur. And right now, this renovation of 4 buildings in Kuala Lumpur is going on. And we have the budget for that, and we're just awaiting for the approval of the central government of Malaysia. This is based on the data analysis that's being obtained through the cooperation of relevant organizations, and also with the leadership of Mahadi, which is the mayor of Kuala Lumpur, which was appointed back in October, this year in October. So with all of these coming together, this is going to support the decarbonization and also low carbon city of Kuala Lumpur going forward. So these initiatives are ongoing. So the next target for us is to have this zero carbon City International Conference to be organized by the Ministry of the Environment that is planned for early next year. The secretariat is going to be IGES, and the UNFCCC and the EU and ICLEI will be working together with these organizations so that we can bring about the results into COP26. So I'd like to ask you for your cooperation from all of you here today. So with this, I would like to conclude my remarks. Thank you very much.
赤木さん、どうも丁寧にご発表ありがとう。
Akagi-san, thank you for your meticulous presentation. I'm sure you're doing much more, but in the interest of time, thank you. Now, thank you for waiting. Yes, we have fallen behind schedule, but it's been a rich set of presentations. Now here, after listening to all of the presentations, from the Australian National University, professor there, and also IGES, she's also a member, I'd like to ask Professor Shu Mei Bai. After listening to all of the presentations, from your own perspective, could we please have your comments?
Thank you, Fujino-san. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are in the world. It has been such a wonderful experience to listen to all the extremely exciting presentations from different parts of the world, and I was particularly impressed by the rich, the empirical evidences that comes from different cities. So there's no way I can summarize the whole thing, but I would just like to highlight a couple of points that from my what I would take as a sort of take-home message from my own perspective. I think the first one is really that struck me is really the importance of cities. Cities are really at the forefront of this whole thing in terms of climate mitigation. And it was really interesting to hear that the 15 gigaton of carbon CO2 equivalent can be reduced by existing technology, and I was really struck by that. Which really actually shows the potential of if cities actually take action and do something, they can really do something big. On the other hand, I also couldn't help but contrast this figure to a figure that we did. If we look at the global cities in the global south, if we are trying to establish the kind of infrastructure there as at the same level as the cities in the developed country, then we probably will have to emit about 226 gigaton of CO2 equivalent, which is huge because the whole world will be emitting like 40 gigaton, right? So I just would like to put this into everybody's mind that we are not really even talking about the vast number of cities that yet to be built in the global south in order to accommodate all the future urbanization, future population, and provide them with a decent level of infrastructure. So I think this is very often forgotten fact, but I would like to really remind people again and again on this. And another thing is that cities are not only a place of consumption and production, but they are only a place of innovation. And this innovation is not only technological, but also cultural and social innovation, which is a very important role cities can play. I mean, if we look at some of the movement that started from cities, we have this, 100% renewable cities. We have climate emergency declaration movement, which is, spreading really quickly in the world. Already have, I think, up 700 or something municipalities have declared climate emergency. And also we have this now net zero target cities. So cities are really can play a key role in terms of bringing about this kind of cultural innovation as well as the social movement, and can really tip the whole society, across the tipping point, and then bring about the new, the real transformation in the whole society. The second thing that struck me is the repeated emphasis of these interlinkages by several people. And these interlinkages is not only between urban and rural, but also between and among different sectors within cities. And cities cannot really do everything alone. We have to consider cities in the broader society, societal sort of context, and really consider cities and urban and rural sort of context in order to really achieve the real difference. And the third thing is the importance of networking. I think, again, several people really emphasize the importance of networking. I think, Yunus, you're from ICLEI, so you know more than anybody else the importance of international network in terms of, sharing ideas and sharing, setting goals and, sharing lessons so that cities can help each other. But also it was really interesting to hear from Kitakyushu that there are these bilateral networks between cities. Cities help, another city. And I think Kitakyushu City has been really doing a wonderful job in this. They have a history of doing it through a bilateral sort of engagement with cities in the Asia Pacific. And that's really a very wonderful thing to do. And it's great to see that they keep doing it in terms of zero carbon emission, journey. And I think the fourth point I noticed is the importance of, the multi-level collaboration or multi-level governance. Cities cannot really do it alone because they are within the context of the national governance system. So it is really, really important for the national government to actually provide sufficient support to cities so that cities can do those, innovative, cutting edge kind of things. And another thing that I really struck me is, I think it was Mr. Wada's presentation when he talked about the attractive future. And I think this is really, really important because usually when we talk about decarbonization, climate change, it's very often linked to dystopian sort of future, but that doesn't really inspire people, right? So I think it is really important that we provide a very positive vision, such as those examples given by Mr. Wada, that by sharing this positive visioning, you can actually inspire people to do a bit more and really do it happily rather than as an obligation and as something like a pain. I mean, it is a pain, but still you can do it with the hope that you are heading towards a more resilient and better sort of society. So I think that is a really important point. And finally, my last point would be, again, there are a couple of emphases on the importance of the financial mechanism, which, without it, everything is just talk, right? So in terms of financial support, how the national government can actually support cities to get over the initial barrier of initial investment. And this is really, really important because some of our research actually shown once the cities have started this momentum, a positive momentum, or say a positive sort of inertia, they can build on. And then, they are almost unstoppable because they have already on the path of, building this positive kind of feedback within the city itself. And the citizens will be committing into the vision. And then, that become the identity of the city. So even if you change your mayor, it will be very hard for the mayor to revert whatever is already on this very positive momentum. So I think, helping cities to get over the initial hump will be really, really crucial. And I would say all of the national governments should really consider this very seriously. So I think those are the couple of points that I would like to take home myself. And it has been really an incredible experience, and I really learned a lot. So thank you, everyone.
本当にシュメバイさん、
Thank you very much, Dr. Shumebai. I think you are able to see what's behind all of these presentations. So much in-depth, insightful comments. Thank you very much. So for the remaining 5 minutes, I would like to ask every panelist to give us the final comments, sharing those 5 minutes. It's going to be very short, but I'd like to go from the bottom. So from the last presenter, Akagi-san, please, you are the first. Thank you very much. And this is not just Japan, but initiatives by Europe. There aren't many opportunities. I could listen to what's being done in Europe, and it seems that there is a funding mechanism that is new to me. I didn't know that. So working together with different regions of the world seems to be very, very important. That's what I understood. Because I live in Kita-Kyushu, I work with many different municipalities. I would like to explore such networking even further. I would like to learn from Europe. I would like to learn from the city of Yokohama. Thank you very much. There are a lot of lessons to be learned.
Next, Leo-san, please. Leo-san, can you hear us? Mr. Leo Christensen? I think he's talking with someone else. Oh, can you speak, Leo-san? Can we have your final comment, please? Just a few words.
Yes. What we were talking about here is, and when we are listening to this discussion here, is that having this integrated effort is really important. What we are seeing here is in Denmark is that we are moving out the really heavy energy users from the big cities and move them down to our areas where we have the energy plants, the green energy plants. Because what actually happened in the big cities when you move out this installation is that, first of all, you're using less energy, but you also reduce the heavy transport, because when you have a heavy energy user, you also have a heavy transport. Those two things is parallel. And this is the way we are creating new jobs in the rural areas. And we are saving a lot of energy. Actually, in Denmark, we're counting on losing 17% of the energy in the grid, just grid and transformer loss. So there's a lot of things where we have to think a new way and properly do it by law. But think about what happened in a big city like in Copenhagen, where they moved the brewery out and created big areas, 26 hectare one place and a harbor, big harbor area. Today, this is the most expensive places you can live in Copenhagen. They have created a lot of new job in small, smart business in those areas. And the brewery have been moved to Jutland and put out in the field and created a lot of job over there. So this is a win-win situation for everybody. We create the right job, the right place, and we are supporting the green energy platforms with having big users close to them. Then this is important, because windmills and solar cells is not stable producers. They only produce when you have wind and solar. So if you should save money in building out big grids, move the heavy users, move them out to the windmills. This is, I think, it's very important to understand that. It's not a problem as long as you have 7% green electricity on the grid, but we have some evenings 100% and more. And then we have to close down the windmill unless we have heavy users close to the production facilities. Thank you.
また熱のこもったコメントありがと
Thank you
う。
very much for your very passionate comments. We have run out of time, so please be brief, everyone, please. And Yakushiji-san, the next is yours. Thank you very much. I was really struck by what Ms. Shumei said. Cities need to be the place for innovation. It's not just about technologies, but also lifestyles as well as social behaviors. We can be a place of innovation. And for that, we need to have a positive vision. Without it, I don't think everyone cannot come together to look into the same direction. Talking about inertia, that is very important. Friction can be an obstacle, but we now have inertia in Japan. Yokohama is at the forefront of that movement. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Yakusuji-san.
Next, Yunus-san, please. Please go ahead, Yunus.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's really a delight. We would like to welcome Lolland and our ICLE World Congress in Malmö as a continuing to share experiences. But I was also very happy to hear comments from Dr. Bai, in particular this connection to Global South. Obviously, there is an issue about this redesign and leapfrog. And we always say that it's not just a North issue, but it's a collective issue. Just an example, today we are in the middle of the local climate solutions for Africa, which is hosted by Rwanda, city of Kigali. And in Africa now we are discussing this transformation and all these issues. And in the session we had shared with Minister of Environment in the Daring Cities, Rwanda government, the first African government who presented the second NDC was with us. So we would like to encourage everyone that it is now a leapfrog opportunity. In that sense, think about those cities who would be relocated from the disasters or earthquakes. The redesign concept, the net zero carbon, this momentum is an opportunity that we can benefit, and I hope we can all discuss it at the forum in early, from our side, preferably end of March in Japan's hosted Net Zero Cities Forum. So with this, I'd like to continue to this collaboration, and once again, congratulations to IGES and all the partners.
Thank you very much. Yes, let's work together. Now, Ms. Heidi, please.
Thank you very much. For me, what was very interesting about this event was to see how much actually is already being done by cities, and that this is actually not such a new issue, decarbonization of these policies. It's been going on, these policies have been going on for some time. And it was also interesting to hear how much cooperation there actually already is between EU cities and Japanese cities, and also how this has been going on for quite some years already. So that was interesting. Also, it was very encouraging to hear how already decarbonization policies are seen in cities as an opportunity. So it's not something you have to do, but it can really be a source of growth, new kind of sustainable growth, and a source of new jobs. So for me, this was very very interesting to hear this. Also on my behalf, thank you very much to all the panelists. Thank you very much for IGES for organizing this. The discussions have really been very, very interesting. Thank you.
Heidi-san, thank you very much. I hope we can meet face-to-face next time. And lastly, from IGES, Takahashi-san, could you give us the closing comments? Yes, everyone, thank you for heated discussions today. Targeting zero carbon, the role of cities and the potential is great. And through collaboration among cities, we can improve this even further, I now understand. And as IGES, we aim to hold an international meeting in February. And we want to make this city momentum even larger. That's the role IGES wants to play. Thank you very much for today. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. And I do hope that we can take action and get together. And I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much.